How's it going, everyone? How are you doing today? I'm going over my top 5 highlights of the week. We're back for another week, the 6th, I believe, in a row. Let's go. I am covering my 5 topics today. I'm covering the new improved plan of the European Premier League, another attempt at creating a super league in Europe. And I'm using, for my second highlight, I'm using a result to back why I don't think that's a very good idea. Mesut Ozil is my third one, of course, being omitted from the Arsenal squads. My fourth one is the Spanish newspaper ABC putting out an offensive article about Ansu Fati. And then that challenge is my number 5 highlight of the week. If you know, you know, you should know. The one, Pickford's challenge on Van Dijk in the Everton versus Liverpool game. But to get right into it, my number 1, like I mentioned, is the FIFA-backed European Premier League. This would have a $6 billion funding package to assist the creation of this league. It would be a breakaway tournament that would essentially replace the UCL, and all the biggest teams would be in here and would only play against each other. There would be no Shakhtars, no Club Brugge, none of those smaller teams. It would be the bigger size, your Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, and Liverpool are actually the ones that are in talks with the other big 6 as candidates, but Liverpool and United are the ones that are in talks to create this league. Now, the format would comprise of up to 18 teams, and with home and away fixtures played during the team's regular European season. So like during the Premier League, during the Bundesliga, during La Liga, it would be played still during those other leagues that are going on, which I think is crazy. Then the top teams would play in a knockout tournament, and the start date could be as soon as 2022 should this plan go through. And the biggest snag for it right now is it does require approval from governing bodies, most namely UEFA, who runs the Champions League and wouldn't want to get replaced. So of course they're gonna oppose it. They've always opposed the Super League, and I just think that the European Premier League is something that's gonna keep recurring. It's Super League. People want to see it. They want to see their big teams go against each other all the time, and are tired of just seeing these supposed easy win games. But with that being said, I'm going into my second highlight, which is connected to this one. It is Real Madrid, and during the week lost to Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League. It was 3-2 to Shakhtar, and ultimately I think this is the reason why the UCL is still special and still relevant. It's because Real Madrid were poor against Shakhtar, especially defensively, and they were playing against the side that was missing 10 players due to the coronavirus. And I think this is what makes the Champions League special, the upsets and the huge wins for these smaller teams, and the chance for these smaller teams to shine, and not only the teams as a whole but individual players within those teams to shine and get their big moves away to bigger clubs. And I actually agree with UEFA that a Super League would eventually become boring. It would ruin just those kind of special matchups. That's what makes them special, is they don't always go against each other, but when they do, it's always a big headline. But if they're always going against each other constantly, I don't know, I just feel like the league would get boring eventually, after maybe 5 years of it, and it would just kind of be boring because you'd be seeing the same teams in the league. There's no change, there's no nothing. And I mean, I guess you could say that the smaller teams of the bigger sides would, be the teams to be making the upsets, but I don't know. It's part of the magic, seeing the smaller teams go up and take down these giants that they had no hope against. It's the magic of the sport, that's what makes it so special. And they beat these teams, they pull it off, and they ruin it for that bigger team, and for me, I just think the bigger teams are tired of getting upset by the teams they should be beating. These teams they should be beating, and they're getting upset. Like Real Madrid against Shakhtar should have been a win for Real Madrid, and they got upset. And I just think these teams are tired of losing to smaller teams. And the other reason is also they're getting money, extra funding, and they get more money when they play against bigger sides in this in this Super League. So I just think this is just gonna widen the gap, and it's just gonna make the sport as a whole just boring, because now it's already bad how much, the bigger teams, how big the gap is, but it's going to get even bigger and it's going to get even more boring. Like, what's the point of even having placements in the league when you know who's going to be your top teams? Like, I know, and that's what I'm saying. It's already kind of how it is. It's already how it is. And yet you're trying to make it even worse by bringing in this league. And I just think it's ridiculous. And I do not agree with the creation of this European Premier League. To move on to my number 3, Mesut Ozil, not featured on Arsenal's squad. He has not featured for Arsenal. He's not made an appearance for Arsenal since March 7th of this year. He was recently left out of Arsenal's Europa League squad and was most recently left out of their Premier League squad after the transfer window closed. And alongside Socrates, they can no longer play in any competition for Arsenal for the rest of the year unless they're included when the club is able to change their squad list in January. Now, this is a pretty obvious sign from Arsenal that they're kind of just telling them, leave in January. We just don't really have use for you anymore. And after this was put out, the Premier League One also put out a statement saying, "This is a difficult message to write," I quote, "This is a difficult message to write to Arsenal fans that I played for over the past few years. I'm really disappointed by the fact that I have not been registered for the Premier League season for the time being. Upon signing my contract in 2018, I pledged my loyalty and allegiance to the club that I love, Arsenal, and it saddens me that this has not been reciprocated. As I have just found out, loyalty is hard to come by nowadays." And although I do agree that it was a bit selfish of him earlier in the year to not take a pay cut, and honestly, I don't know if I would have done the same if I was making as much as he would, but I don't think it was fair. I think it was still disrespectful to just drop him like that. Now, Arteta said that it was not related to the pay cuts. It was not related to any behavioral issues. It was simply a tactical decision for the coach to... He said he was picking the squad that could best compete in every competition, that can give the best, out of Arsenal. And he also took responsibility for not getting the best out of Ozil during his time as manager. And I just think, rivalries aside, I just think it's difficult to watch, a proven player be omitted and kind of ostracized, thrown to the sideline. It's a bit frustrating to watch. And just as a fan of the sport, he's proven himself, and it's just kind of unfair. I mean, if Arteta feels that that's, his best squad without Ozil, fair. He is the manager. He sees the squad every day, so ultimately the decision does rest with him. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of seeing such a proven player sit on the sideline. But to get into my 4th highlight of the week, a Spanish newspaper in Spain, ABC, has apologized after comparing Ansu Fati's pace to a black street vendor fleeing from police, in quotes, of course. And this comes off the back of Barcelona's, UCL win, in which Ansu Fati had a ridiculously good game. And I just think it's ridiculous, honestly. It's such a stereotypical racist thing that how does it even register in your head? Yeah, that's a good headline. And it made it even worse when the author of the article, Salvador Sostres, he issued a public apology, and he said, and I quote, "As I attempted to highlight the beauty of Ansu's movement and his class as a young player, some expressions were interpreted as racial discrimination. That could not be further from my intentions or opinions, which are very favorable towards the player, as I have always expressed in my match report since he made his debut. I deeply apologize for the misunderstanding and to those who may have been offended." Now, end quote. Where in his mind did he think no one was gonna take offense to his statement? I don't understand. You really have to be living in your own little bubble to think that no one would get offended by your statement. For it to be a misunderstanding, no, that is it's such a blatant stereotype. It's a prejudice. It's ridiculous. And I don't know how, but whether you were intending to do that or not, it doesn't matter. You said it, and it's offensive, and it's rude, and it's ridiculous that he thought that it was okay. And it's just it's just a very confusing situation. How do you do that? How do you just think in your head it's okay, yeah, let me put this out? No. And then Barcelona, not the team, the country, wait, no, city. Barcelona's the city, right? not the team, the mayor of Barcelona, Ada Colau, also demanded a retraction from the newspaper and tweeted, all my support to Ansu Fati and to all the young anonymous people who fall under this characterization or stigma due to the color of their skin, which, it's not necessarily the most generic statement, obviously, but of course the leaders have to, kind of put out those statements. But it's good to see that he does support the taking down that article and going against it, which, if he didn't, then that would be kind of awful, horrible. But yeah, overall that situation is very confusing and just ridiculous that the guy would put something out like that and not expect some kind of backlash. But to get up to my fifth and final highlight of the week, Jordan Pickford's challenge on Virgil van Dijk. Jordan Pickford, the keeper for Everton, of course, and Virgil van Dijk, a center back for Liverpool, their main guy on defense. And honestly, I watched this challenge a few times since it happened, and I just don't understand how Pickford got away with nothing. Like, not even after the fact, not even after the game where they get to review and look, nothing. He came away with nothing. And Pickford goes in, studs up, and has seemingly no intention to get the ball. I think he touches it, but it's such a dangerous and reckless challenge. Like, Virgil van Dijk was gonna get hurt 100% of the time with that challenge. The only way he wouldn't have gotten hurt is if he knew exactly where the challenge was coming in. And whether Van Dijk is in his offsides in the build-up or not, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't take away from the fact that that was a ridiculously dangerous challenge, whether Pickford intended to do so or not. It's such a dangerous and reckless challenge that he needs to be punished for it, and it would have shifted the whole dynamic of the game if Pickford would have gotten a red card almost immediately and Liverpool would have gotten a penalty. Now, I know there's a double jeopardy rule, which means you can't get a red card and a penalty at the same time, but when this happens, it's such a malicious foul, whether he had that kind of intent or not. It's worthy of at least one or the other, something, a penalty or a red card. And it's the offsides overruling everything is the reason why we also need to review it after the game and come up with a punishment after the game. And I find it ridiculous that VAR initially, I think they weren't reviewing it at first while Van Dijk was down and injured, and eventually they started reviewing it because of the offsides, not even the foul. And again, the offsides overrules everything 100% of the time, which is kind of ridiculous. Situations like these, we need that review after the fact and an explanation from the Premier League as to why Pickford gets away with nothing. Like, why did Pickford get away with no punishment whatsoever for this ridiculous challenge? And this affects both teams, obviously one more than the other. For Liverpool, the more affected of the two sides. They lose their star man in defense and Virgil van Dijk just after losing Alisson, their starting keeper, and Van Dijk needed surgery after this challenge, showing you how bad it was. He needed surgery and is going to be out, I believe, for the rest of the season. He's done. And it's going to affect Liverpool mentally. Seeing that challenge, seeing their best players go down, and it could also light a fire under them, for just wanting to take over and do it for them, But I do think Liverpool were the ones that came out harsher out of this. Obviously, Everton may be affected mentally, with the surrounding controversies. It may affect the locker room talk, whatever, but it would just be easier for them to move on. Now, Pickford it could affect him more mentally, affect his aggression on the ball, but overall, Liverpool are the worst off of the two teams, and the Premier League didn't even give a reason as to why Pickford went unpunished. They simply said that no punishments were coming his way, and I just think it's ridiculous. And what's the point of VAR if we're not going to punishable fouls? Like, I don't understand how Pickford gets away with this clean and safe. This whole situation is just very confusing to me. But yeah, those are my top 5 highlights of the week. Do you think the European Premier League is good for the sport? Would you be entertained 100% of the time? Do you feel it would widen the gap? Do you feel it wouldn't really change anything with the UCL being left in the dust if this goes if this goes through? How do you feel? Would you miss the Champions League? Would you rather have the European Premier League? What are your thoughts? And that ties in with my second highlight. So, how do you feel about Mesut Ozil not being included in Arsenal's squad? Whether you're an Arsenal fan or not, do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about the Spanish newspaper ABC putting out this, article and the author supposedly believing that it wouldn't pretty much wouldn't bring any backlash, which I find ridiculous. But how do you feel about that whole situation? And what are your thoughts on Jordan Pickford's challenge of Van Dijk? Do you think it was clean? Do you think it deserved to go unpunished? Do you think it deserved to be punished? Do you think he deserves to get a ban of some kind, which I personally think he does? What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know down below in the comments. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed my video, please leave a like and subscribe. Go check out the socials. My Twitter is at BlueHermit1. My Instagram is at BlueHermit_. They're both in the description. Please share I mess this up every single time. Please share your socials with your friends, family, everybody know. Let the people know Blue Hermit's where it's at. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.